Okay, all of the pieces are finally in place for the TGL to kick off. And this is not just traditional simulator golf. In fact, the screen that players will be hitting into is 24 times the size of a traditional home golf simulator screen. In addition to that, they've got the green zone, where a green sits on a 41-yard wide turntable that pivots, and even the green changes in its different slopes with over 600 actuators sitting underneath. So this is not just your traditional indoor golf. And we've got a lot to break down here. So if you're someone who's wondering how exactly does the TGL work, well, we're here for you. We've got it all broken down, and we're going to dive into all of it here,
we are,
Mike.
man. It's exciting. I'm excited for it. It's finally here. Major setback last year. It should have happened a year ago, but now it's here.
Yeah, so let's talk first about the venue where this is all going to go down. So we've got the SoFi Center, which we know had its major setback when the roof collapsed. But as of since then, there's been some lessons learned, and they're rebuilding it in a way that's going to be much more long-lasting, of course. But the entire venue is massive. It's about the size of a football field, and it's made up of two zones. So you've got the screen zone, and then you've got the green zone, right?
Got it. Your long game area, your short game
exactly.
area. Right? Okay.
So simplifying that, starting with the screen zone, like I mentioned before, the screen itself is massive. It's a giant 64 by 53 foot full swing simulator. How about that?
Ours is like 10, 12 feet.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that.
And what
That's
I think
huge.
What's really going to be so interesting about this is that unlike hitting into a 15-foot screen, here this is going to take up almost the entire field of view for a player. It's going to be an immersive situation because players, as they look out amongst that screen, that's really the only way you can compare it is like an IMAX.
Yeah, right.
They're going to be looking into that. It's going to feel much more of a realistic feel for the player being able to visualize so much of the shot.
Right, right.
In addition, don't forget, this is also going to be played out in front of a live audience. We're going to talk in a second about the schedule, where it's going to be airing, when it's going to be airing, all that stuff. But there'll also be a live audience there, so they're not going to be peering down at a small screen. They're going to be looking at this IMAX-sized screen.
Great fan experience
for these big shots.
I think so, yep.
No doubt about it. Also, they got the tee boxes themselves. So the tee boxes themselves are going to have real grass. You're going to have fairway lies, and you're going to have rough lies, and then you're going to have a sand area. And the idea here is that the players, depending on where their shots end up landing into this screen zone area, they're going to then have to place their ball in one of those lies in order to hit. So it's going to have very realistic, and we know one of the biggest determining factors of how a shot is played is the lie itself. So lie will be determined here.
Lie's going to be determined. So you have 3 different lies. I love that, and a massive screen in front of them. So how realistic is that going to be? And we didn't even get to that short game area yet.
We didn't even get to the short game area
Holy
yet.
cow.
So
okay.
I think one of the biggest complaints that a lot of people have about simulator golf is short game, and short game being a very feel part of the game.
Absolutely.
So here, I think the TGL did a really good job of finding a way to make a hybrid situation that meshes the two. So the way that works is that after your longer shots are played into the screen zone, and we're going to talk more in a second about the whole layouts and how those are, but physically, you play your shot into there. Once they reach about 50 yards and in, they're going to be playing into the green zone. The green zone itself is massive as well. It's the size of about 4 different basketball courts laid out. And in the green zone, it's a 2,200 square feet, and really no two shots here are the same. Because like I said, the entire surface sits on, it's a 41-yard wide turntable. Yeah. And because of this, they're able to pivot the entire area to properly align with the angle in which the player is going to be approaching the green.
That's so cool.
Right? Because we all know when you play golf, out on green grass, one of the biggest parts of course management is leaving yourself in a shot that gives the green the most accessible line in, with the least trouble.
Absolutely.
Here, depending on where you end up, they're going to pivot that green to exactly match that scenario.
Wow, technology, man. So they got to be on their game with that, and that's going to be exciting to watch for sure. Because, we've never experienced that. No one has.
True. It's brand new, groundbreaking technology. Underneath that green, there's going to be just right around 600 different actuators. And what those actuators do is they're able to raise and lower the surface. Since there are so many of them, they're able to create throughout that whole green area, which, by the way, is also surrounded by bunkers. also containing real sand. But that entire area, not just the green, but the approach area as well, can be raised and lowered so that they're able to create whatever slopes they want. So even though it's the same physical space that's being occupied, each time a player's playing into it, it will look and feel completely different.
How cool is that?
It's wild.
Yeah.
So with that said, the next thing to talk about is the hole layouts themselves. And I think there's a couple of really important takeaways from the hole layouts. The first one is that these are all designed specifically for TGL. They do design them based on some geographies and topographies that you would see in real life, canyons, and they have some that have more of a linksy feel. So they've got that. But the course designers are not constrained in any way by what would be traditional geography, right? Normally, course design is doing the best that you can with the land that you have.
Right.
Here, it's created in a virtual space. So basically, the handcuffs are completely removed from the course designers, and they're able to create really whatever their imagination can come up with here.
That's super cool. And I'm sure, I mean, the graphics, they look incredible. I mean, they're not just like video game Nintendo 64 style. I mean, these are legitimate immersive, like you're playing golf outdoors but indoors.
Absolutely. And I think a perfect example of that, which we'll talk about here, but I want to also mention that the course designer himself, Bo Welling, he really does a fantastic job. If you really want to dive into each hole, go and check out the TGL website because they do a really good job of interviewing him and his thought process. But I think the perfect example of that is the quick draw hole.
Yep.
So this is obviously, looking at it, it's visibly sensational, and it's not something that could ever possibly occur in real life.
Right.
You've got this plateaued, I guess what would you call
canyons.
like landing area there that would be inaccessible in real life.
Of course.
But again, what it does is, and it's a fine line between walking the line of making it almost too unrealistic, while at the same time making it realistic, but also creating these very specific strategic risk reward situations that you could not necessarily have in the real world. Again, like I said, quick draw is a perfect example. You have two basic ways that you can play it. You can play it out safe to the left, which is going to be about a 720-yard par 5. So in that way, it is more or less a required 3-shot par 5, even for, we're going to talk about who some of the players are in a second, but your biggest hitters on tour, guys like Rory McIlory, are really not getting there in 2. And that was very specifically and strategically designed by Bo, so that even if you have a great drive to the left side, you cannot then access that green. So he's forcing you to play it as a 3-shot hole.
Wow, that's cool.
The other way to play it is as a very long, over 500-yard par 4 if you take the aggressive line towards that plateau. That will allow these long hitters to reach that green in 2.
Sure.
However, if they go with that more risky route, they're also coming in a far less friendly approach angle for the green. And that's where, like I said before, that moving green is really going to come into effect.
Absolutely.
So if we think about how this would play out based on what we mentioned earlier, you have probably 2 long shots into the big IMAX size screen, followed by, assuming you took the par 5 route, a third wedge shot, which would be played into the green zone, where you're going to have more of a realistic short game feel.
Dude, that's exciting. I like that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's called, what was that called? Quick draw?
So that hole is called Quick Draw.
Okay.
And there's going to be in total, there's 15 holes that are going to be played in each match.
Okay.
And then not only are the holes unique, but for each match, they'll be kind of randomized. So you will get a mix of par 3s, par 4s, and par 5s, but players may not know ahead of time which the next hole is going to be.
Right.
So we're going to see, this is really made for match play, and we're really going to see some strategic,
I think so.
and thought process that comes around that as we roll through it.
I'm interested in how they play it with the strategies, things like that. I even heard that each teams get timeouts and things, so they're going to be able to kind of strategize, and that's the fun part. That's the different part of golf that we've never seen.
Exactly. In order to be successful, and we're going to talk in a second about the schedule, and then how that leads into the playoffs and the ultimate champion. In order to be successful, the teams are going to have to work together.
Sure.
And we'll see that more in the format. So let's just kind of talk about match format. We're going to go through each of the teams in a second, but each team has 4 players. However, only 3 will play in each match.
Okay.
So each team will select 3 players to play that week's match. And as part of that, there's basically, as I said, 15 holes played. You're going to start by playing the first 9 holes in a triples format. And the way the triples format works is essentially it's alternate shot played with 3 guys.
Got it.
So it's going to be player 1 hits the first shot, player 2 the second shot, player 3 the third shot, and so on and so forth. So each of the 2 3-man teams are going to be playing this alternate shot as they work through. So again, building off of each other. We've seen the success of alternate shot and the nuances of it in things like the Ryder Cup.
Sure.
So where you don't want to put your teammate in a bad position. And I would imagine all of these guys are going to be mic'd up, and I think that's where a lot of the excitement's going to come from.
That's
as you see some of that strategy, right? So now you have that on the first 9 holes. The final 6 holes are played in a one-on-one format. So each player will play one-on-one against a player from the other team, and each player will play 2 of those 6 holes. So it might be player 1, A versus B will play holes 10 and 13. Players B versus C will play, et cetera, as we work our way down the line. Each hole themselves is worth 1 point, right? So if you win the hole, and there's no carryovers. A win of a hole is 1 point. A push or a tie on the hole is 0 points.
0 points.
But there's a big catch. And this is where, like I said, I think this is in a lot of ways, TGL has been built for prime time. I think they understand the entertainment value. So that's why they've added the hammer. Okay?
Here we go.
So the way the hammer works is that so the team who's possessing the hammer, and I'll talk about that in a second because it goes back and forth. The team who's possessing the hammer can choose to throw the hammer most likely when they feel like they're in a position where they've got some leverage, where they could, in a good position to win the hole, or if they're trying to come back. Because the way this works is if the team throws the hammer and the other team then accepts that challenge, the hole now becomes worth 2 points. So as you can imagine, a team can catch up some serious ground that way, or if my team hits incredible tee shots and the other team is in trouble, I may throw the hammer there full well knowing that I've got the advantage for the rest of the hole.
That's so interesting. And you could throw it for either way. So if you're playing well, I'm trying to understand this. Like, I guess throughout the hole, you determine if you're playing well. So if you just, Max Homa just throws a dart.
Yeah.
Right? At that point, he turns around and goes, hammer.
Hammer.
And the other team goes, well, he's going to make it in and win the hole anyway. No, we're not taking it. Concede.
Well, here's the thing. If you don't accept the hammer challenge, if you concede, if you decline the hammer challenge, you automatically concede the hole and give the other team 1 point.
Right, but in that scenario, at that point, it makes sense to concede.
Potentially, but there's you never know. It's golf. It's still golf. Anything can happen.
True.
You could have Tiger hole out from 15 yards and win the.
That's where it'll get exciting.
And win the hole.
Right.
So this is where, and again, the whole team has to be on the same page with what they want to do. But here's where a player can really press, a team can really press. They can throw that hammer. Now, once the hammer's been thrown, it is then in possession of the other team so that they can throw it back when they see fit. So I think we're going to see a lot of that and strategically used in certain spots. But keep in mind, if a team throws the hammer and the other team accepts, that hole is now worth 2 points. If the other team declines, they concede the hole and lose the point and move on. So I think the only time you might see a decline is if they absolutely think it's a no-brainer, the other team's going to win. They're better to lose 1 point than to have to lose 2 points. Exactly. All right, guys, we'll get you right back to the TGL in just a second. But first, we want to thank this week's sponsor, Titleist. And in the pursuit of speed and playable distance, Titleist engineers have developed a new material construction that unlocks the next generation of driving excellence. The new GT Driver Series represents the biggest technological leap ever. And we recently had the opportunity to test out the brand new GT heads for ourselves, including the GT2, GT3, and GT4 models. And for me, it was the GT2 making the ultimate in speed and forgiveness across the face. And for Mike, he had the GT3, which is a great combination of both speed and control with the adjustable weight. So you have to experience the Titleist GT heads for yourself. Go to Titleist.com to find a fitter near you and give them a try this season.
And big thanks to FootJoy. They are the leader in performance golf rainwear with their new Hydro Series line of rain jackets, and they're raising their rain game even higher. They've got so much great options, and real golfers like us, guys, we make every single day playable. We don't let weather get in the way. If we've got a tee time booked, we're going and we're playing in it, and Hydro Series allows you to do it. They have a lineup of high-performance rainwear, and from mists to monsoons, I mean, you name it. it will protect you with so many options, like the Dry Joy Select, the Hydro Light X, the Hydro Tour, the Hydro Knit. Here's one of the hats that I love. This thing is water resistant. It's just the water beads right off it when you're out there. It's an absolutely fantastic hat. All the gear that they make from the top all the way down to their shoe lines, they know what they're doing for weather. You got to check it out. Go to footjoy.com. Find the Hydro Series jacket that will help you play in any condition, anytime, anywhere.
Now, let's talk about some of those teams because I think it's really exciting. I think at the end of the day, this is going to be built on personalities that people want to watch.
Sure.
I think there's going to be playing for a lot of pride. I think there's no doubt that some team out there is going to want to be the inaugural season champion. So I don't think this is going to be, to use a Tiger phrase, a hit and giggle event. Mm-hmm. I think that the guys are going to be out there, they're going to be serious. And I think on top of that, you've got guys who want to make their other team members proud.
Sure.
Right? You don't want to be the guy who holds up the team. So speaking of those teams, there are a total of 6 4-man teams, each representing a different city in the U.S. And then, as I mentioned earlier, each week, 3 players from each of those 4-man team will be selected to go and play that week's match. Okay. Again, more on the schedule in just a second. Stick with me
but
here.
You're getting that 1 match per week only. 3 guys versus 3 guys during the week, and that's it.
During the week, exactly. And then we'll talk about the playoffs because that changes the format a little bit. So the teams are the Atlanta Drive, Boston Common, Jupiter Links, Los Angeles, New York, and the Bay. As for the players, and here's where it gets a little bit interesting. The New York Golf Club is Cameron Young, Matt Fitzpatrick, Xander Schauffele, and Ricky Fowler.
Okay.
Heading over to the Atlanta Drive, you've got Justin Thomas, Patrick Cantlay, Billy Horschel, and Lucas Glover.
Okay. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Boston Common. Here's where we see Rory McIlory, Keegan Bradley, Adam Scott, and Hideki Matsuyama. Then, of course, we've got Tiger's team. Jupiter Links, Tiger Woods, Max Homa, Kevin Kisner, and Tom Kim. Yeah. That will no doubt be a very exciting team to watch.
Kiz is a little, he gives it.
Exactly.
So does Tiger. Yep.
And they're competitors.
Yep.
So I think I'm very excited to watch that one. Mm-hmm. Now, over to Los Angeles, we've got Colin Morikawa, Tommy Fleetwood, Justin Rose, and Sahith Theegala.
Yeah.
Another great team.
Absolutely.
If one thing is what you're noticing here, the common thread, all household names.
Absolutely.
Top 50 guys, top 100 guys.
Yep.
The TGL did an excellent job of putting some of these rosters together. Rounding out with the last one, the Bay Golf Club. We got Ludwig Aberg, Wyndham Clark, Minwoo Lee, and Shane Lowry.
I was going to ask if Lowry was in it. Okay.
Lowry's in there.
There you go.
Now, as of when we're recording this right now, there are some injuries and things like that. Aberg going under the knife. I don't know how that's going to play out. That is the one good thing, too, with the 3-man teams. If you do have a guy who's injured, if you have a guy who's
great.
tied up with a commitment or so whatever.
Sure.
But here, like I said, from the top to the bottom, all exciting names, all guys who can hold their own out there. So really exciting.
Hats off to the guys at TGL, the guys and girls putting the schedule together, for this, with everything else that the other guys have going on. Incredible. All those logistics and things like that. I mean, it is Monday nights and Monday nights only.
Yes. So what this is going to be, the schedule will be, there'll be 1 match per week, every week, starting in January, and they're going to be aired on ESPN live in prime time.
Great.
Which is a perfect time of year, not conflicting with football, obviously.
Right. Yep. Mm-hmm.
They've done a really good job, as you mentioned, with putting that schedule.
Yes,
and to me, in a lot of ways, it's bonus golf.
100% bonus golf.
Right? Uh-huh. I mean, primetime bonus golf.
Right.
Like I mentioned earlier, so the way that the actual format's going to work, structure-wise, there's going to be a regular season followed by a postseason. So it's similar it parallels a very similar way in which the points are accrued in hockey. Mm-hmm. So what you have is 2 points. Teams receive 2 points for each win and 1 point for each loss in overtime. All right. 0 points for a loss in regulation, obviously.
Got it.
That's what's going to determine the leaderboard. Each team is going to play each of the other teams in a round robin format. So everybody will get to see everybody else. Mm-hmm. Every team will get to play the other team. It'll round robin, like I said, with 1 match being played out each week.
Did I miss you mention Scheffler?
No Scotty Scheffler.
Okay. I thought so. Continue.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
No doubt. It's a missing spot.
I
there.
thought so. Okay.
Yeah, it would have been nice to see Scotty in there.
Yeah, didn't mean to cut you off, but I noticed it after the fact.
But yeah, no
Okay.
Scotty. But like I said, strength of the entire league is still
Dude, no
pretty
doubt.
significant.
It's some of the best of the best.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Now, here's an interesting part. So we talk about the standings, right? So the regular season standing with everybody ultimately trying to make their way into the playoffs.
Right.
If there is a tie in points on that leaderboard, so if first and second are tied in total points, the tiebreaker is the number of holes won.
Oh, interesting.
So it will be tracked throughout the season, and it applies one more area of strategy and pressure of teams to win more holes.
Right.
So it'll also kind of show if a team is more dominant because they're accruing more points by winning more holes, versus let's say it's a match where it goes to almost 0 points. They're tying every hole until at the last and pick up one.
Right.
Right. Versus a team that's more dominant and is winning more holes. That's going to be the tiebreaker for that. Out of the league, the top 4 teams then advance into the playoffs.
Okay, so 2 are staying home.
So 2 are staying home. 2 teams go into the playoffs. In that first round of the playoffs, it's single elimination. So Team A and Team B play. Loser goes home. Winner moves on. Okay?
Yep.
Then we get into our championship series. This series then is going to be a best of 3 series. So this is really the bulk of the playoffs is going to be that champion series. So we're going to quickly narrow this down to the top 2 teams in the league. And those 2 teams are going to play a best of 3. And ultimately, the winner of that best of 3 series comes out TGL champion.
It's pretty cool.
It is.
Yeah, and it's not. I thought it was going to be a little more complex, but when we broke it down like this, it seems pretty straightforward. And then understanding how the format's going to be. And did you mention this before that if an actual match comes to and tie, it's closest to the pin?
I might not have mentioned that. If it's true. So if it comes down to a tie, they do the 3-man closest to the pin. So
on the green zone?
Yeah,
Oh,
that's a great question. That I haven't seen that clarification yet. So
Okay,
if we
yeah,
see that, we'll
same.
keep you guys posted. But as of right now, according to the structure, it's if there is a dead tie at the end of the match, and we're talking about a regular season match,
You may see that a lot.
you may see that a lot. You're going to have a 3-on-3 closest to the pin challenge.
Cool. Okay.
And that's how a win in overtime, that would be overtime,
Yes.
is worth 1 point.
Got it.
Right. So it's an interesting format overall. I think it's one of those things that undoubtedly, I think there are a lot of questions around it, which we try to answer now. But more importantly, I think the first time you watch it, it's one of those things you get it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
You just need to see it play out. And I think that it's a new and unique format. But more importantly, what I'm very excited to see, as most people are, the players who are involved. But I'm even more excited to see the technology, because I think it's just another way to expand the game of golf. And I think it's another way to enjoy and play the game of golf. And I think as revolutionaries we've seen golf simulation really be and take hold in the last couple of years, this is going to be a giant step forward. And when you see the players hitting into that massive screen, whether you're there live in attendance or watching it from home, with all of the stats displayed next to it, which is going to be another, you got shot tracer, you got stats, you got another thing that fans can really kind of lean into and watch and be entertained by. I think when we see that in the combination with that massive green zone moving and flexing and changing in real time, to me, you'd have to be crazy to not watch the first one and see how this is going to play out. So we're excited to see how it play out. We'll continue to keep you guys updated here on the podcast week in and week out of how this goes. But that in a nutshell is how the TGL works. Make sure you post your questions and your comments below. We'll see you in the next one.